I'm not a planner, first of all. So this is kind of like, for me, this is like a dream.
You are leaving for Barcelona tomorrow. Do you have your week in Barcelona planned out?
I have no idea how far the hotel is from the airport, but I only have that confirmation code to the hotel. It's funny because we have a podcast, but I would not call myself a podcaster. Would you?
So yeah, I think I'm a person with a podcast, but not a podcaster.
Right.
But this is today, episode 99. We're one away from 100.
Holy crap.
Did you think we were going to make it to 99, let alone 100?
I was saying that I thought so, but like really deep down, I wasn't sure. That's a lot. I mean, think of how many hours we've sat here and just talked partially insightful things and then also nonsense.
Yeah, it's definitely half insightful, half nonsense. I don't know if that ratio is perfect. But one, if you've stuck with us from any amount of episodes and you listen to us, like, thank you. It does mean the world to us. For the longest time, we did think it was just our grandmothers, which was totally fine. Like if I just made it for her entertainment, that would have been good enough for me. But to this day, I think we have, now this is not a lot of people.
That's funny.
But
if we bought all this pot equipment and did all this just for our grandmas, that's okay. We would.
I mean, that is grandson and granddaughter of the year, to be honest. But I think it's really cool that we made it this far.
I do too.
It's been a learning process of like what's interesting, what's not interesting. We started with interviews. We kind of shied away from them. Now it's hard to book interviews. So we just kind of do it ourselves, which I kind of like more.
Yeah.
But is there one or two things that you've learned or have been surprised with on your journey to 99?
Ooh, good question. I feel like nothing about us is surprising. Like when we're on here, I can almost predict what you're going to say, which I probably would have gotten there in our friendship anyway. But doing this, it's funny when you ask me something out of the blue and I like expect exactly what our conversation is going to be. So that's what I learned. That's a personal thing. And then I also feel like the power of like an interesting hook, really, because we can post something that we think 2 people are going to see and 2,000 people see it, or we post something that we really thought would be captivating and engage people and no one cares. So it's just really interesting, like the power of a powerful tagline, headline, caption, all of that. It's very interesting.
So one of the things that I learned, and this was like a journey for me and maybe for us too, is that sometimes we post the pod and it'll only get 400 to 800 views. Now the clips do much better, but in the pod world, 400 to 800 views is not really a lot. But if you think about it like this, you and I have both done public speaking and we've spoken in front of groups and it'll be an auditorium full of 200 people. Mm-hmm. And we get so amped for that. We're like 200 people just stared at us and watched us for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And we feel so good about it live. But then if we have a pod that gets only 200 views, we're like, oh, what? But the fact that 200 people tune in and listen to you is insane. So I really got this from an Alex Hermosi post on LinkedIn.
So good.
Where he was like 400 people in an auditorium and it's like someone's like screaming like, yeah. And then it's like a post that only gets to 400. They're like, sad. But really 400 people is 400 people. And if you're one of those 400, we love you and we thank you for listening. And we have a really cool episode today about publicly traded travel companies. And one specific thing, we're going to zero in on one guy and his company called Booking Holdings, so booking.com. And the CEO, Glenn Fogel, has been pushing this idea of the connected trip for quite a while. Now, before we get into what a connected trip is, I will say I will be a little bit critical about Glenn Fogel's vision here, but he's much smarter than me. He is the CEO of Booking, which is a giant company.
Yeah.
And he actually started in 2017, and he took the stock price from $1,500 a share to $3,600 a share. So with all that being said, count what I say, basically pennies. It's all probably meaningless because this guy knows what he's doing. But Connor, do you know anything about the connected trip? Or I'm sorry, actually, I want to get this right. It's the connected trip or the perfect trip, but I think that they phrase it the connected trip. What do you know about this?
Not a lot. Does a connected trip mean that like everything is done at once?
Yeah. Okay. So basically, there's been this idea in the travel world. So, as you know, the travel world is very fragmented. All of the brands want to own you and they want to have as direct of a relationship with you as they possibly can.
Yeah.
So, this is not unique just to Booking, but people have been really after this. I want everything about my trip done in one single app, like a super app for travel. And so Glenn Fogel, the president and CEO of Booking Holdings, has this vision of what he calls the connected trip. Now, the idea is a seamless travel experience where the consumer is able to book all parts of their trip in a single place. And then each supplier has access to the traveler's data. So imagine that you book your flight, hotel, tour, and rental car all within the Booking app. Now, why is that good? Because Booking captures all that revenue, and we're going to get to that. But in theory, if your airline was late, right? If there's a perfect connected trip, the entity that booked all that trip could inform the hotel that you're going to show up late. So maybe, and this has actually happened to me once, but
that makes sense.
Yeah. So this actually happened to me once. I was on a flight and I was going to check in to a Marriott. And instead of arriving at 10 p.m., I didn't arrive till 3 in the morning. Well, when I didn't check in that day, they canceled my reservation. So when I showed up at 3 in the morning, they were like, sorry, you don't have a reservation. And then I learned like, oh my God, that's because you canceled because you thought I was a no-show. So you want that room to try to resell it the next day. That makes sense.
Yeah,
With the connected trip, in theory, Booking could message the hotel and be like, hey, Kenny's on his way. So with all of that being said, I want to basically kind of quiz you like a product manager would. And I want to ask you, let's imagine that you're going to London, one of our favorite spots, and you are going to book a personal vacation for you and a guest. If it's not me, I'm upset, but I understand that you have other friends. So you're going to London. It's a 5-day trip. How are you beginning searching and booking flights, hotels, activities, cars, the whole thing? Walk me through kind of step by step.
The first thing I do is flights. So I'd go to Skyscanner. I would type in my route. I would see all available flights in there. I know it's weird. Like you can use Google Flights,
Skyscanner.
You can use whatever.
Yeah.
Always use Skyscanner. And then I see what my best fare is on like my preferred airline. I'll go on the airline's website directly and book it from there. So I never have booked from Skyscanner. I just use it to like get a lay of the land. And then I'm going to be honest with you. This is an embarrassing thing, but I think I've booked like 2 hotels in my life.
Whoa, really? You always get booked for you?
Yeah, I've never really done it. I did a Courtyard Marriott one time in Miami when I was in a crisis. And then I did another one just recently for St. Augustine when I went and saw T-Pain. And then I was in there inside of the platform and I'm like, I haven't booked a hotel in like 7 years or something.
You know what? That makes sense because I was on Slack screen share with you and you were asking me like, should I do this? And the way that you were navigating around the screen, it was giving like big boomer energy. And I was like, is she 53 years old? Or
I always get panicked.
28?
I'm like, I have no concept of how much a hotel costs. So when I'm going to book it, I always panic and I'm like, oh my God, these fees. Like I start freaking out. And it happens on Airbnb too. It's like cleaning fee, $400. You're like, what? That's so unfair. But I would do that. And then, I guess that really would be incredible to have just like a data-driven travel experience where you're getting notifications from one place about everything. That would be awesome. And your example is the perfect example of why this should be functional. But how many years do you think this would take to combine all of these things and create like a seamless one-stop shop?
So it's definitely a little bit of a big deal to build because not only do you have to build all the infrastructure inside of your app, which Booking Holdings has all the ability to do the front part of this. It's the communicating to the different travel vendors that's probably the difficult part. There was a travel startup that was kind of going for this of building the plumbing, and they actually had to fail. They had to fail. They failed. And the reason that they failed is they were building something that no one wanted. Right. So the interesting thing in my thesis is on the surface, it sounds great. And I know exactly why Glenn Fogel pitches this, right? Because it keeps more bookings inside of his world. And the
Yeah,
more
of
things
course.
they book, the more money that they make. He's a smart CEO, right? He's telling a great story. And then he's inspiring his team and his investors and their community to like rally behind this thing. But my thesis is this is a thing that actually Apple and your iPhone and your Android phone, they actually handle for you. So the idea of all of your bookings being in one place, I think it's cool. I think that it's a problem that has already been solved good enough. Now, my use case of like missing my flight and my hotel canceling is probably so small that happens probably like 0.1% of the time.
Hmm.
That's a really small use case to build this entire world. But my argument is that your phone actually takes care of this, right? So
Yeah.
when I travel, my phone is the thing that shows me all of my travel stuff because I have push notifications on. So as I'm going about the world, I can basically go in and I can manage all different parts. Now, on my phone, because I'm a little bit of like an organization dork,
For
is
real.
I hey, easy there. So I basically have a page where I have all of my travel vendors. So I have like Delta, United, Marriott. I have Uber on that screen and a few others. And so like I just go to that screen and then everything's there. That is the place that houses my connected trip. Now, to the product managers that are working on this at Booking, I'm sorry. But Apple just does it so good that I think that you're actually solving a problem that kind of may not exist. So I don't know what your take is on that of like, does the phone do a good enough job? Or is this really a problem that like users just they really want to be able to book all within a third party, which also raises its own issues.
What do I think? I think that it's become so freaking easy to do everything that it's kind of changed the landscape. Like, remember the days where you would print out your boarding pass at home and tuck it
Yeah.
away in your backpack? Like, I remember that as my entire life. And now I don't even check in for my flight sometimes, like, until I'm on my way to the airport. You know what I'm saying? The lack of like attention you need to give all of these things because of how simple they are is really cool. And I also feel like there's pros and cons here that you have to think about. I agree that the phone takes care of the majority of it. And I love how Google Calendar will be like, hey, you want me to add your flight to
Oh,
Philly when I just booked it 5 seconds ago? Like, that's
it's
fantastic.
a great point.
It's great. But so, like, the convenience of it is amazing, obviously, saves you time, hypothetically, and effort, of course. I hope that it would be smart enough to present you like a personalized, customized experience, like based on things that you've booked and hotel like rooms that you've stayed in. Hopefully, it can send you like tailored recommendations and things like that. So I can see how that would be cool. It could kind of like build you a travel itinerary, perhaps, for a trip. Um, I don't know if it would have anything to do with like cost savings. I think it's more just like a time, like a simplicity time situation, really. But the first thing I thought when you were saying you'd have to get everybody on board is like customer support. Do you have like a general customer support that then reaches out to this, to hotels.com for you if you need, or to that hotel if you need? Or is it, I want to know like what the support would look like and if it's all under one umbrella or if it's redirecting you to these different places still. You know what I'm saying? So that comes to mind.
It's a super good point. And you actually touched on something there that I think may be like below the surface here is when you were talking about Skyscanner, you were like, oh, I never book on Skyscanner. And a lot of people are in your camp where they're like, I only go direct. I'm one of those that I only go direct. So I think that, I mean, listen, booking makes billions of dollars a year. So there's no shortage of people that will book through a third party. But I guess that I'm also very biased and slanted because I would never, under any circumstances, book any part of travel for leisure inside of like a third party like booking.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't do it because there's so many things that you lose control of. And so yeah, I just think it's really, really tough.
I also would wonder, like, you know how when you book on Frontier, how it like bundles everything together, and throughout the booking process, it's like, do you now want this? Do you want to add this? Do you need this? And you're like, holy crap. Sometimes I like the offerings, but when I just booked on Frontier to go to Chicago, I was like, it asked me probably 10 different times if I wanted to pay for the bundle. So there is something super annoying about that as well, that I could see maybe you wouldn't get as, maybe the prices would be increased because they're trying to sell things as like a package instead of just being able to go and like shop and browse. Does that make sense?
So you're almost wanting to shop a la carte just to make sure that you're not getting swindled. Because you're right, because I mean, really that's what tour operators do, right? Like tour operators they'll have a group, right? And they'll get the hotel for 200. They'll package some amount for the flights, some amount for the transportation, some amount for the activities. And then they'll say, all of these 4 things are going to cost you, Connor Ann, $3,000. Now the tour operator got it all for $2,000, but they don't let you see the a la carte pricing. They just say, hey, this package is $3,000. And so I think what you're saying, I think a lot of travelers fall into that camp, but there is a subset of travelers that are like, you know what, this is so stressful.
It's a perk.
It's like a perk. It's like, you just take care of it. I think luxury travel is kind of like that, where like the further up the chain that you go and the less you care about money, the more that you actually want convenience, and you're like, whatever. Like, okay, $3,000. This vacation looks amazing. I know I'm going to have a great time.
Also, another example I think of is flexibility. So if people are making like a ton of changes and things like that, how would that work? Because sometimes I have to change my Delta flight 5 times in the span of a couple days. Is that getting like updated to these systems properly? Is it too much like back? Like, it's one thing if it's just with Delta, and then all of the other things I have planned are like set in stone. They're not receiving notifications of any changes or anything, which that could also be a perk if they get updated. It's just, I have questions about like the functionality of it and making sure that it's not going to end up biting me in the butt and being a perk and making everything like super streamlined. I think it would take a minimum of 5 years from now to be able to make something where it could be that seamless. Because if it's clunky and you changed your flight, but your hotel didn't know, but it's in the same app, so you thought they knew, like that kind of stuff would get a little nuts. So overall, I'm here for it. I like the idea, but I do think that if anything, like Apple's going to beat them to it first, or some way to do it less in like a less niche way, not just like a booking way, but just AI, the universe, whatever you want to call it. What's the metaverse even? I never really understood what that was. Is that what I should have said there?
No, I think you actually nailed it there. I think the metaverse is dead. I don't think anyone's I think that was a hype cycle that lasted like a year or so. Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg tried to like hype that up, but that's pretty much dead. You said something super interesting, which was the perfect bridge to the next thing that I would like to talk about. It was super interesting. So Airbnb's CEO, Brian Chesky, who is, I guess, kind of my business crush, to be honest. I just think he's like so cool. Airbnb's like great, whatever. Yeah. And he has a golden retriever, huge points. But anyway, huge stan, right? So Brian Chesky said they were talking about AI and Airbnb, and he has had one of the freshest takes on AI that I have seen. It's been honest. It's been raw and it's been real. And what he said was that it will take years to rebuild Airbnb into a fully AI powered digital travel concierge that learns and adapts to each individual user. And so right now, or actually it wasn't now, but last year, Airbnb CEO told Skiff that the company would be rebuilding the entire app with AI at the center, and which is crazy. But the craziest part is he said that it will take years. Now, I have a theory on why it's going to take years, and it has a lot to do with the structure of the internet. So when you go on Airbnb.com and you shop and you click around and you search, Airbnb can capture all of that information about you, but it only knows about you on that website. As you leave their website, they don't have any idea of your patterns, your buying habits, what you view, what you like. So it's very hard to make a personalization because we live in this weird client server world where you only exist to them when you're in their world. So when you're in the rest of the world, they don't really know what you like. And so if you actually want to have a truly, and this is my one big take where it's like, AI is going to give you a personalized experience. And I'm like, way harder than you think, because how are you going to get the data on the people? Right now, what happens is you have to fill out a bunch of information.
Yeah.
And by the time that I go through the exercise of filling it out, I'm like, I could have just ran a bunch of searches and had more fun and got more feedback. So I don't know if I really buy into just yet that AI is going to give people like personalized trips based on what they like. I actually think that's kind of BS. But it will be interesting because they are very thoughtful and they make a great product. It will be interesting to see how they do AI inside of their app. I know there's like nothing really to like weigh in and discuss there, but I thought that what you said, it just made me think of my CEO crush, Brian Chesky.
What it made me think of is the difference between corporate and leisure travel. So are you identifying, if it's only pulling, data from you traveling for work and you need it to build you a vacation itinerary, like then you'd have to say, this trip was for work. I actually want to go to the Maldives. Like there's like, you're right. There's too much conversation that needs to be had, too much like that needs to be collected up front for this to really work. But hey, I'm here for it. If they can make this work, I would absolutely love to try it. I just get worried when things aren't. I'm not a planner, first of all. So this is kind of like, for me, this is like a dream just to have it all just in one place because I'm always all over the place. But yeah, I don't know. I'd like to see what happens. I'm surprised. I feel like booking.com isn't something that you hear about all the time doing these new innovative updates and things. So good for them to like take a step into the future, I guess.
I know the answer to this, but the audience does not. And just to highlight how much of a planner Connor Ann is not, Connor, you are leaving for Barcelona tomorrow. Do you have your week in Barcelona planned out at all? Do you have any activities booked or things that you're doing for those 5 days that you're going to be there before we go on the yacht?
I have no idea how far the hotel is from the airport, but I only have that confirmation code to the hotel. Everything else, we're going to Olay our way through the streets and we're going to figure it out. I have no idea. I feel like Barcelona too amazing. Is super special. Like people always make it sound like you don't have to plan a thing. Just like let your, ears take you through the streets, pop into this sangria place, waltz through these cobblestone streets. I really feel like that's a place you don't have to plan super hard. I will say, based on like past trip experience, which places have we been where if you don't plan something or have something to do, you're going to be bored?
Ooh, are you asking me?
I have an answer.
Oh, really? Damn, that's a tough question.
It's a good one, right?
I would say there's some basic cities that if you didn't have anything to do, they're not that great. So for example, the one that I was thinking of, but I think it's pretty much a trash city in general, is Berlin.
That was the one I was going to say.
Oh,
if you
no
don't
way. We're on the
have
same page
anything planned, what do you do with yourself?
I have no idea. I don't even know what you do if you try to find plans there, because there was no good restaurants. Everything was weird. Berlin was actually one of the most disappointing cities I've ever been to in my life. Like, I think Spartanburg, South Carolina has more charm than Berlin does.
To sneeze.
Oh my God. If you guys don't see this, her face is just going crazy. It looked like she was going to poop. But I was like, oh.
Girls don't poop. It was literally like right on the edge of my tongue. I almost sneezed. Oh, that's the worst.
I was like, are you about to poop on the pod? Super weird.
Ew. Gross. Can't believe you just said poop on the pod. How dare you?
Alliterations are fun.
Anyways, you guys, we're kind of just talking this out. As you can see, we don't know what the future holds for connected trips and AI travel, but it is interesting. It would be pretty cool to click a button on your little app and say, I'm traveling for fun. And then it just spits out a million ideas for you. I already feel like Airbnb experiences is very cool. I'm super excited to see what Airbnb does, because I feel like they're always nailing it. They never like roll something out and it's confusing or not super slick. Like when you open their app, I just love the interface and everything. So I'm excited to see what happens with them too. Well, thanks for listening to us today, you guys. If you have any podcast topics you want us to cover, please just email hello@travelnerds.co, and we'll talk to you after we go to Barcelona.
Ooh, you nailed that.
Let's do it. Do one.
Barcelona. I just said it straight up. Barcelona. All right, hold on. All right. Barcelona. Oh, I just sound like I have a lisp, actually. that wasn't great.
That was tough. You just sounded like you're hammered. Barcelona.
Ba la 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 la.
Okay, you guys. Talk to you later. Bye, nerds.